Hello again. I can only imagine the dismay felt by viewers of this channel when I embark upon another of my thought experiments. After all, this is a point at which my grandchildren usually try to slip unobtrusively from the room, muttering to themselves, "He's off again." I want to talk today about the strange idea, of which we hear so much lately, that traditional pastimes and hobbies in England are in some mysterious fashion excluding ethnic minorities from participating in them. We have heard this said about everything from walking in the countryside to going to folk clubs. The complaint is that there are too many white people taking part in these pursuits, and that this can be off-putting to black people, Muslims, Asians and so on. There are accordingly demands for access to be widened and barriers to be removed, although the precise nature of these supposed barriers remains obscure. Some minorities have responded to this problem by creating their own groups, such as Muslim hikers or black female walkers, so that they have to have less contact with the white people walking in national parks and so on. As I've mentioned many times, during the 1970s I lived for some years in Israel, including a spell in the Gaza Strip. I've always been a great walker, and while walking in the Sinai Desert and the Negev, I have to say that the only people I encountered were Bedouin, Israeli soldiers, settlers and so on. I never bumped into any white English people. This was not a matter of regret to me, because of course if I wanted to see white English people walking about outside cities, then I would probably have stayed in England. So of course in Israel I only happened to see Bedouin and Israelis on the whole. Here comes the thought experiment. Imagine, if you will, that I decide to go and live in the African country of Uganda. I quickly resume my hobby there of walking in the countryside and discover to my amazement that the only people I find there are black Africans. Well, that's a bit off-putting, isn't it? Where are all the white English people, and why am I not meeting them in the countryside? There must be barriers preventing them from enjoying the Ugandan countryside. I start to raise a fuss about this in Kampala, the capital, and draw attention to the fact that as a white Englishman I am not being made sufficiently welcome in the Ugandan countryside. They need to widen access for people like me and remove the barriers which are stopping white English people from visiting the countryside. I then hit upon a really great idea, which is to start a white English walking group so that I can feel more at home in the Ugandan countryside and not just see a lot of black people there. This is much better. Now I can enjoy walks in the company of people like me, other white English people. I may be wrong, but I rather suspect that such an enterprise might not be viewed favourably by the average Ugandan, especially those who lived in the countryside. They might reasonably ask why I've come to live in Uganda in the first place if I don't want to see a country full of black people. If I'm so keen on walking about with a bunch of other white English people like me, why didn't I stay in England? They might even accuse me of racism. Indeed, I am sure they would, and with some considerable justification, I fancy. This then exactly parallels the situation which we are now seeing in this country. While the one case seems utterly bizarre and probably racist, while the other is regarded as perfectly acceptable and desirable, is a bit of a puzzle to me. But I dare say that some viewers will be able to point out where I've taken a wrong turning in my reasoning.